So hello listeners, welcome to the Car Care Podcast. This is episode 4 and I'm your host Stephen Jakes, and in this episode we'll be discussing all about odours and in particular odours in your car. So before we commence, let's introduce our residential and car care specialist, the guru himself, the one and only Gary Wray. Now Gary's been involved in the car industry for about 33 years now, has a wealth of knowledge. And so let's bring him in. Hello, Gary. How are you doing, mate? It's good to see you. Welcome to the podcast.
Yes, yeah, I'm very good. Thank you very much for introducing me with that great intro. And all good really. Okay, so let's get started. This time we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to just go through some bullet points of what we're going to go through, so that those of you listening are talking, thinking, wondering about smells can cut to the chase, or they can fast forward, or
to
whatever they want to
part,
do. Yeah. I mean, most of you will be so interested that you want to go through all of it. But let's get cracking. Right. So who cares about smell and who doesn't? So that's
the first one.
That's the first one. So who really cares? Who's actually here that's listening that actually really cares about smell or not in a car? Right, I'm going to go through the kinds of smells that are problems. So I'll go through the list of the different kinds and the main ones that happen in cars. And, we'll go through some bits and pieces how we deal with those. How bad can they actually be? Okay. DIY tips and advice. So those of you who've got the smells in their own cars are here. What if I just bought the car from a dealer? So I bought the car, just taken delivery of it, nearly new, and it smells. Do ozone machines work? So for those of you people that wondering what to buy or try and deal with it yourself, what does pairing do and what does it actually mean? What is thermo fogging? These are all different varying smell machines.
Yep.
And do they work? What's a UVL fogger? And does that work? And where does a 19-year-old girl fit into all of this?
Well, that's the question I'm looking forward to hearing the answer to. So I suppose we better start really at the very beginning.
Okay,
and,
so the
so
beginning
we go to the start. And that is really who cares about the smells and who doesn't. And so in your experience now, Gary, what's your take on that?
Right, well, you can bet your bottom dollar that 90% of our audience on this particular subject will be men. But actually, the people that do
because
care...
men smell?
No, but you will laugh. Actually, those men are listening now, thinking, the problem's theirs. It's actually women that are the ones that do have the problem with the smells.
Yeah.
So most of the time, we get calls from people that are men, and they're saying, "Hi, I got this car. It smells." And mainly, the underlying fact is that it's the wife that doesn't like the smell. So 99% of the time, it's the wife that doesn't like the smell. It's her problem, and she's the one that cares, albeit that the man is ringing and trying to solve the problem. I will put a caveat to that. A lady that's been through the menopause tends to lose her sense of smell, which is why these older ladies out there that can't smell the perfume anymore. So if you one day walk in towards an old lady who smells of perfume and doesn't understand why she absolutely smells of it, that's because she can't smell it anymore. She splashed half the bottle over herself and thinks, there's nothing like the old stuff I used to buy that had a proper smell. So, so the older ladies out there don't seem to care, but any lady out there that does, then 9 out of 10 times she'll be talking to her other half about the fact that she doesn't like the car, she doesn't want to go in it. And often she's making excuses because once she's said the smell and doesn't like the smell, often she just doesn't like the car. And you tend to find that we're going in my car, or I won't go. And, it's that bad because she doesn't like it. So that's it. So there's the first question answered.
Okay, so thank you for that. So let's move on to the next question, and which was, what are the main smells in a car? That could vary from a range of different problems and instances, from smoke, the dog, milk, different types of spillages, children being sick, dogs being sick, and the list goes on and on. So,
well, you've pretty much got them there.
Yeah, so I'm just going in a little bit more, really.
Okay, so The main problem one is smoke, I think, particularly these days. And, smoke can vary, really. You'd think, when somebody smoked in it yesterday, then that's the smell of the smoke. But, there's 3 different parts of the smoke that create the smell. The cigarettes, obviously. But and one of them is the ash, and stale ash is probably the worst one. And that's the one when you add a little bit of dampness to it, it has a bit of a twing to it, and when you get in a car that has ash or walk into a room, I want you to imagine now that somebody's been smoking in the room and you come down in the morning and, I remember years ago when I smoked, I used to put a card over the ashtray. I'll put the ashtray outside just for the fact that the ash is out of the car or out of the house. So the ash is one. Then of course you got the nicotine, which is the other one that we all visualise when we're looking at our car. You can see the headlining a bit yellowy or round where the cigarette would be above the steering wheel. You get all that nicotine on the glass and everywhere else. Yeah. And obviously you got the smoke itself that smells. Of course, if you take your mind back to a few years ago when you came out of a pub and you'd be smelling of the smoke, and that's the smoke that smells. You've still got smoke in your actual clothes and they smell smoky. You haven't really got much ash in them or much nicotine because it's just a smoky room. So they're the 3 main areas. What's
the most commonest one for you that you have? You deal with
people
generally?
Calling is smoke. I think that's 90%. I think the second one is dog. Some dogs smell, don't they? And the dog hairs and the coats. And then you've got spilt milk, obviously, which is an horrible one because that seems to come after. You spill the milk and then about a week later you suddenly get this kick up. And it can be really quite bad. The one after that would be... let me put my glasses on, I wrote this down.
You got sick, you got wine and... you got...
sick wine, musty water as well. The car's leaking water and you don't know it. You've got this musky smell and it's like a mouldy smell. Obviously sick, anyone's going to say, oh God, that's awful. You get somebody sick and then it's immediate and then whatever it was they were eating and then, whether it be milk or wine or whatever, then it obviously that creates its smell in its own right. There are 1 or 2 others out there. You get some foul smells. People leave chickens and things in cars and fish and we've had everything in it all and everything.
There's some strange people in this world, Gary, isn't there?
Well, you want to talk? Can I just break off a little funny story? One of the worst ones we had, a lady turned up in this brand new car. She'd had it for about 3 weeks, and the first week of getting it, they parked it at the airport, and she'd forgotten that she'd left in it bit of chicken bits, cut chicken or something, I don't know, some kind of chicken stuff. And they'd gone on holiday and they'd been away for 2 weeks.
Lovely. And in the summer?
It must have been because they were on the bus coming back. You got the bus and go through. They could smell it from on the bus. Everybody's on the bus. What is that smell? That is outrageous. They're actually going along on the bus and it is just terrible. So then, of course, the bus pulls up and they're still walking towards their own car, not realising eventually when they get
probably
there.
Moaning about it.
Yeah. And then
it was us. It's our car.
Their new car as well.
Yeah.
And, the lady drove it to us with the windows wide open. And I remember it's in our old building. I remember sitting in there thinking, God, I think I smell something. And walked out into the car park and she got out of the car. She'd had the window open. And she said, here it is. I told you it was bad. And, it was maggots everywhere in it. It was full of maggots as well. So
that's a bit like farting in a lift and then complaining about the smell to the other people in there, isn't it, really?
Well, yeah, something like that. A little worse than that. Absolutely.
I can't imagine what that smelled like.
Yeah. So, funny enough, we didn't quite get to the bottom of that one. I'll put my hands up and honestly say that what we knew then is not what we know now.
Yeah.
And I think, we got 90% of it right, but I know now that I could probably, if I had that car again, hopefully I don't ever see it again.
No.
But we could get rid of the smell. But, what we knew then was not what we know now.
And I've hate to imagine what that was like when you first opened that car.
So that answers the how bad can it be.
Yeah, how can
I've got probably 4 other versions of that.
Yeah.
Different shapes and sizes, but we won't go into them all. But, we've had over the years, some quite funny ones and quite some, even some bizarre ones where people have put smells in cars deliberately, and all that. There is an article on our old website, still there, if anyone wants to dig it out, where we had to do some detective work and had the UV glasses on and stuff. We use those still today, the UV lights, because it identifies protein and you can physically see the smell as well as smell it, which is unusual.
Clever.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, so
let's move on to the next one, which obviously is probably a popular one, probably one that you're going to get quite a lot, and because there are many dog owners in this country and around the world. And so let's go to the dog tips and the advice.
Okay, so for dogs, animals, usually the smell comes from their coat, so it's a bit sweaty. So basically it's an organic smell and it gets in everywhere. It gets into the hairs and gets in all over the place. You'll find wads of hairs in places. If you've bought a car and it's somebody else's dog, then that's normally what you're all doing it for. Most of the time, if somebody's got a car themselves, they don't smell their own dog. So I don't remember the last time I had anyone phone and say, I'd like to get the smell of our dog out of our car. Most of the time it's because they bought a car or inherited it and found that they've got lots and lots of smell in it and they thought they didn't have it, and they realise that there seems to be smell everywhere, and it's usually because people just fall in love with their dogs. And those of you listening that have got dogs now probably can't smell them, but the buyers of your car can. So here's some helpful advice. First off, the car needs an amazing vacuum. You've got to get started at the front and go right the way through the car, and an airline's useful. If you haven't got one of those, you just got to get in all those gaps and brush out and get all those hairs out. And you find that if you give it a really good vacuum and a brush, that one of the ways to get the hairs out is to put a rubber glove on. These throwaway ones are quite good. Those, you maybe use 2 or 3 of those, but they're quite grippy. The ones that like elasticated ones.
Yeah.
Or a marigold will do. But you put it on one hand and you've got your vacuum in the other, and then you can sort of scoop it. They tend to grip the hairs and you can pull them out of all the gaps. You'll find that in the gaps beside the seats, all the rear ones where you fold them backwards and forwards, if you're finding the evidence there, then it will be elsewhere. So if you're looking into those little corners and gaps and places like that and you're finding the hairs, then you can bet your bottom dollar they'll be in places that you don't know they are. So as an example, if you've got where the handbrake goes, you've got the little gap, and if you look down that gap, you'll find them in there as well. You'll find, in between the seats, and then you'll fold in the back seat. Sometimes they're a bit tricky. Sometimes the back seat may not come up very easy. Look on YouTube and get that up. Then I would suggest a very good way of cleaning all the surfaces is this spray foam upholstery cleaner. You can get that in a bucket. Get a bucket of hot water, a nice microfiber cloth, soft cloth, and you work your way around the car cleaning all the surfaces. Clean the glass. Smell tends to go to glass. Clean the sun visors. Even though it's been a dog, the smell will have emitted itself onto other surfaces. And when you're wringing your cloth out, wring it out of the bucket, and then put it back in the bucket, rinse it again, and rinse and wring it out of the bucket each time. So the dirty water from the cloth is going out. So if the seats need a proper deep clean shampoo, you may need to hire one of those machines or take it to somebody who's got one, and you need to see they've got one of those machines. If you're taking it to a valet place and they go, don't worry, we clean it, no problem, the chances are they haven't actually got an extraction machine. They're just cleaning the surface the same way the fabric's clean, the same way as they're cleaning the hard surfaces. And that's what you're going to do today if you're going to do some DIY, but the shortfall will be that extraction part. So you need to, if your seats and carpets are dirty, there's usually dirt and dog in that. So you need to extract that. I recommend the foam sprays because they spread themselves even. You don't get the car too wet. I'd advise ideally do this during the summer months when you've got a bit of breeze and it's going to dry, because you find in the winter months you rely on using the car. If you're planning on doing this in the winter months and you're not going to use the car, then you're spelling yourself a disaster. So clean it all surfaces, foam spray. If you want to get a little bit more sophisticated, you can get a biological washing liquid. You've seen them out there. Sometimes they just say Not, you know, the different products out there. You've got bio, non-bio. Sometimes they used to have it worded on all the bottles, but sometimes you have to read into them and see. Normally the biological ones recommend 40 degrees. So that's the... But if you can't find it, look it up online and find one. There's all the common makes are out there. The liquid one works a lot better than the powder, and you need to get some gloves on. So you just put a bit of that in the bucket, and that then, while you're cleaning, wringing your cloth out, the cloth's taking that to the surface, and that works quite well. So that's going to work quite well with dog odour, and also it works with most general odours. It will work with smoke odour. You tend to find with the smoke ones, it's ash then, of course, and you tend to find there's a lot of ash around the rear seats and round the side of the driver's side. You get a lot of ash where somebody might have been smoking. Originally, everybody starts with their car and they think, oh, I'm not going to smoke in it, you know, and then they sort of, after about 3 months, one wet, rainy Monday morning, and you're sitting there in the queue for traffic, and you have one and you think, I'll just have one, I'll flick it out the window. So for the next 3-6 months of the car's life, people are flicking the ash out the window, which invariably, most of the time, is going everywhere but out the window.
Yeah.
And you end up with it all over the back seats. And that's what I was talking about earlier. You get all the ash, and the ash has got the stale smell. So you tend to find a really good vacuum and a good bash of the fabrics. Bash it with one hand and push the dust, and really, you'd be surprised how much is coming out. Try to do it on a windy day and open all the doors and bash away, and each time you vac the car, pull out more and more. And you'll find, going back to the product, the suggestion I was talking about earlier with those products, if you clean it with the way I've just said, clean every surface. So explain a little bit better. So you start at the pedals, you work your way through the carpets, you do the mats, you clean the side panels, you clean the seats, you go up, put the seats forward, you clean under the seats. You know, you work your way all the way to the back, you know. You may have had to change that water 4 times by then, depending on how much you're getting off the cloth, and, you know, and maybe 2 or 3 microfibres even. And, you know, you generally find the microfibre will clean itself as you're going. But, you know, if you've got a few of them, you can do the headlining with the cleaner one. And you work your way through and then change the bucket if the bucket's getting dirty. And you'll see the dirty, slimy stuff coming off, and it's getting dirty. Then you'll realise then that you may need to change the water a bit more often. And you will even find on a car that's only a year or 2 old that you'll still find a lot more dirt than you thought you would. Microfibres are very good at pulling the dirt off the hard surfaces. Don't just go for the soft surfaces. The hard surfaces are the way where the smell goes. So most people look inside the car, think, oh, it smells. They're smelling the seats. But the smell gravitates to hard surfaces that are cold as well, and more likely to go to those. So cleaning those little metal door handles and the glass and all of those areas is very important. So once you've done that, you will find that it may have exponentially got better by 80%. And if that's done that, it might be good enough for your other half if you're doing it. Sometimes that's the case, but, you know, for those ladies that are doing the job, then, you know, you're doing it for yourself. You find 80% better as what you could expect. So if you then dry it all out and you can still smell it, sometimes you can then locate where the smell's coming from. So that's where the 19-year-old girl comes into use. I'll bring her in early. A 19-year-old girl's got the best sense of smell, or a pregnant lady. So what you're trying to do is get somebody to get into the car and smell where the smell's coming from. Now, before you've cleaned all those surfaces, you generally find that the smell's coming from everywhere. So you can't really stick your head in and say, oh, there it is. So once you've done all those surfaces, maybe twice, you may have done it once and then decided, well, I'll go back through it all. Or you may do it a week later. Usually, as a rough rule of thumb, it will get 80% better each time. So you've only got to do it 3 times and you're well on your way, except for this bit, which could be that there's some kind of spillage gone on. Could be the previous owner spilt something. We've had cars where people have run businesses with fish businesses. they've spilt the fish, and you think, oh, it smells there. Now we've cleaned the car, you can smell it behind the seat. And once we've, we get into more detailed stuff. What we do, we get seats out and get carpets up, and we found spillages in 2 or 3 places in a car. You'd never have found those by trying to smell around the car until you've done all the other stuff. We use other tools, and we'll get to those further down the line. So generally, that covers most. Of course, if you're talking about a spillage and we're doing DIY, yes, you can clean all those surfaces, but you may find that you spilt milk down a gap somewhere. There's varying products you can use for that. The biological washing liquid works, but you've got to be careful you don't spread it everywhere. So most of the time it comes down to an extraction machine, and if it's gone down the gaps between the seats, usually it makes more sense to get the seat out. So you're getting into a more professional level there, but there's no reason why you can't take the car to a mechanic if you're the other side of the world, and you're listening to this, and get the mechanic to remove a seat and get the foam up and get to the problem. I will say, if you've got a pint of milk soaked right through the fabric, that it makes sense to think about changing these items. A lot of insurance companies do, because they've never had the solution. But the foamy bit might be 4 inches thick, and the milk's sunk into that. You can use bicarbonate of soda on milk, and what you got to do is imagine you're trying to replicate what a washing machine does. I nearly said imagine you were a washing machine then, but but if you put all your washing in a washing machine and turn it on and leave it on for sort of 5 minutes, take it all out, it's not going to be clean. So all it's done is put the water, moved it around, massaged the clothes by it moving round, and then you're emptying it. If they could make a washing machine like a microwave, then they'd have them now. The reality is they can't do that, and the reason they can't do it is because the smell on milk, as an example, is thousands and thousands of millions of trillions of billions of tiny micro parts of bacteria that's causing the smell.
Yeah, and enzymes and stuff.
Well, you need enzymes to get rid of them, and the enzymes what you're putting in your washing machine, which is the biological bit. And of course, they need to exchange places thousands of times to fight this battle. So it stands to reason that you can't put enzymes on the foamy bit through your carpet and expect to suck it back up and it's done the job. That would be the same thing as getting your jumper smothered in milk and then it smells, and then putting it in the washing machine and expecting to take it back out after it's filled up twice and then throwing the water out the drain. The machine has to go for an hour, because what it's actually doing, it's getting the 37 degrees, which is the perfect temperature for the enzymes to digest the problem, and then it's massaging away for that long. So when you now replicate that, trying to do that in the gap between the seats and of your car, then you're not going to do that very easy. You can see now why lots of people it's not very successful. And of course the wine and the milk fall in the same category, as well as the sick, because the sick is a combination of whatever we want to describe it as, but it is, it's the same.
Especially
sort of
if you
thing.
drank a pint of milk just before you were sick.
Well, or milk and wine.
Yeah, milk and wine.
Yeah, so similar thing really. You're getting into a professional area there where spillages are, and you need specialist equipment to do the suction part. But if you are hiring a machine, a wet vac, and you have got your scrubbing brush and you have got your bucket of water, you need to do a lot of extracting first. You don't want to spread the milk. We do get lots of cars, people come to us and say, yeah, we've been to all and sundry, and they've put 4 more gallons of water in the car and spread it everywhere, Yeah. So, so you need to focus on getting as much of the solids up before you then start putting liquid onto it to then suck it back off and go over and over and over again. Try and work at 37.5 degrees if you can. In case you're wondering what a benchmark is, it's about as hot as you can get your hand in the bucket. If you've got a hot bucket of water, if you can just about get your hand in it, it's about body temperature. It's deceiving. It's it's hot, but not too hot that you burn in your hand, because then it slows the speed of the enzyme. So, but it works better at that temperature, and if you can keep the car warm in the summertime, it's easy to do, and the enzymes work like that. But if you can't keep the car warm, then it doesn't seem to work very well.
Yeah. Okay, well, you mentioned specialist equipment, and so talking about specialist equipment, and I know that you've used this firsthand at your place. But well, let's go and talk about these ozone machines, and do they actually work?
Okay, so there might be some people listening who've got hotel rooms. That's another one. Ozone machines work very well for airborne smell. So what ozone is changing the chemistry of the air, shall we say. And so ozone goes everywhere air goes. So that's also where smell goes. So let's use an example. Say you had something that smells and you put it in the car. Let's use a great example. Smelly pair of trainers, you put them in the boot. We actually did this test once, because I don't know if you've ever actually really got to grips with a really smelly pair of trainers, and they can stink. So put them in the boot of the car, put an ozone machine in the car, turn it on, leave it on for a few hours. What's actually happening is the ozone's oxidising on the surfaces. It's having a chemical reaction on the surfaces, but it's going to all surfaces air can go to. So the ozone will, if you put a tiny bit of breeze in the car with a little fan, the ozone will go right inside that trainer. And of course, when it's finished, that trainer won't smell. There will be no smell from that trainer at all. Gone. However, if you put the trainer on, it will smell straight away, because the ozone's only killing the airborne. It's not actually physically killing it's not sinking in. So those, what we talked about earlier were your dog ones. You could put an ozone machine in a car that absolutely stinks a dog. Absolutely stinks. Leave the ozone machine in there, and I can guarantee you this, that car will not smell at all of dog, until you get in it and then start moving surfaces and everything else.
Sitting on the seats and...
so you're massaging all the dust particles and all everything else. So go back to your hotel room, people. Somebody smoked in the hotel overnight. You give it a good clean and a vacuum, and it still has that smoky smell. That smoke on the curtains and on every other surface. Your ozone's going to work really well. There's lots of controversy about ozone and what it does to the environment and so on. But, you're asking me point blank, how does it work and does it work? I would say, yes, it works very, very well in certain instances. And, if you've got a car that's been smoked in, maybe a driver shouldn't have smoked in it, a delivery driver, you might be a dealer now. You might be thinking of buying an ozone machine and thinking it's the answer to all your problems. It's a temporary answer to all the problems, and it can be a permanent answer to a car that may have only been smoked in for a short term. Do you have to treat it with a little bit of respect? You can breathe ozone in on mild levels, and they use it in hospitals, and we have ground ozone, and the old TVs used to emit ozones at the back, ozone. But ozone in concentrated levels can really be like smelling, what's that salt stuff, Well, that's stuff you breathe up your nose, smelling salts. You've ever done that? Smell some of that?
Ammonia.
Woohoo! That's what it's like. So you get a smell of if you get in a car that's got the ozone in it, it's like woohoo! Hang on, and you shouldn't do this. No, So you put a sticker on the window, and make sure you haven't made mistakes like that I've made in the past. It can, people with respiratory problems, there's a bit of publicity out there about that, and people can actually get, can make you pass out or something. I'm sure somebody's passed out somewhere, I don't know.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. Right, so pairing, you're looking at the
so what about pairing and what is it?
Pairing?
Yeah, what is it?
Okay. So, pairing. So, right, well, lots of people buy cars, and I'm sure there's people there listening now that bought a car with a load of air fresheners in it. People are sort of hang them off the mirror, and that sometimes the dealers put them in the cars as well, and it makes it smell, of course, when someone opens the door. But also it can be used to hide a smell. It doesn't work very well, because you end up with a combination of the smell that it's meant to be, i.e. the pear or the tree or whatever it is that they're putting, and the horrible smell. Okay,
like DO on a deodorant on BO.
something. Yeah, it can be that. It can be the dog smell with the cherry on top. So what pairing is? Okay, so smells are made up by a recipe of 6/7 different combinations. So all of our smells that we smell are made from a recipe of 6 or 7 different smells. Using an example on the colours, obviously we know there's 3 colours that make up all our colours, so smells are a tiny bit more complex. So what pairing's all about is often you can make a smell change by adding other parts to the recipe. So use an example, there was a story I knew when I went on a training course. We've done a lot of training stuff on this. An American guy came over that was doing odour control training, and he said that there was some houses right next to a dump out in America somewhere, and they put some chimneys up, and the chimneys emitted a smell that was a sort of an unknown smell that mixed with the smell from the dump created another smell that wasn't dump smell. So at the same time, there was a building that we were doing the course in the Midlands. I went up to the Midlands. I got the badge, by the way. I got this. I did.
Well done. Congratulations.
I got 98% on the test in the end, because I've been doing all this stuff. So, I was on the course. Nobody was on it doing the cars. There was people on it doing buildings and houses and everything else. So this is why the house one was the example. But this big old stately home that we're doing the training with, the lady that was offering the place was out for rental and so on. I suppose they came over from America. And anyway, she said, I have a terrible smell near that window over there. She said, and there's some beautiful flowers the other side of the window, and if you open the window in the summer, it will let a nice breeze through, but otherwise it's a stuffy room. But we can't open the window because there's the smell from the drain now. And so the trainer said, well, let me have a look. And they had these blocks at the time. We still use these blocks. They're like a fibrous block, and it has a smell on them. And he picked out a smell that was a very similar recipe to the smell of the horrible drain. And he gave us some of these blocks and said, look, all you do now is put the blocks the other side of the window, and then the smell coming from the drain will mix with these smells and create a comfortable smell. And it means that you won't have to dig the building up to change the drains, because that was the alternative. So pairing can be used in combination with smell problems. We've got a Thermo Fogger. We've got a couple of those. And if you have a smell that's embedded in, and you're on the last tiny piece, and we were talking about the 80-20 earlier, you can sometimes emit a smell using the fogger. Just to give you an example, the cherry works well with sick. So if you had a sort of background sick smell in the car and you thought, I think this smells a bit, still smell it every now and again. Somebody pulls his face and says, well, I can smell it. Can you smell it? I can't smell it. Nobody, you have all this sort of conversation. And then we have that with dealers sometimes. Ladies bought it back. She can smell it. No one else can. Everyone's had a smell of it. Well, she probably needs less parts per million to smell it anyway. She's got a stronger sense of smell. So the likelihood is she can smell it. And your air freshener may create the wrong smell. So if you're looking at the one for sick, it's actually cherry, and because eventually sometimes the smell will wear out, and so sometimes a little bit of the cherry deodorant, or it's the pairing product that has this cherry recipe, can work really well. And just while you're listening, in case anybody else wants to know, the musky smell works well with mint. That may make sense to people thinking, oh yeah, you can understand now. If you smell a musky, kind of watery, smelly kind of, off water, you can understand that it's more closer to the smell of mint. Yeah, do you see what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, there's a lot of other smells. We carry about 5 different smells that work quite well with problems. So, there's more than one way of attacking a problem. If you've got a serious problem with a car, sometimes a combination of the Ozone, the pairing fogging machine, and you wonder about what other machines we've got on that list?
Yeah, we have. Yeah, so there's also the Thermo Fogging.
Thermo Fogging's the one that does the pairing.
Yeah.
So that, just to tell you what that is a bit more, a Thermo Fogger is a machine that creates like a smoke.
Yeah.
So you put it in the car, you remotely set it off, and it's there might be people listening to thinking, what's this bomb thing? I've heard of a bomb. What a bomb is an aerosol can with a smell in it, and basically a lot of them you just compress the lid, put it on, put it in the car, and it will excel what's in that can. So that's really working like pairing, really. It's not removing any of the problem. And it sometimes can work, and people swear by them. They go, we've got these bombs, works on every car. Well, the answer is it's not going to work on every car. It's not going to bring out the sick from down between the gaps of the seats, is it? But at the same time, if you've got a problem like a dog smell, the car's been clean, there's no dogs in it, and actually there's just a little bit of surface smell on all the areas. Maybe the car's been sitting there for a week or two before it's been sold. Then the bomb thing works. Now the Thermo Fogger is basically a bigger level of that. It's a professional machine. It doesn't just spray it like an aerosol. It puts it into the format of like a smoke, and it actually looks like smoke, and you think it was smoke, but it's not really smoke. It's what they use in the discos, the smoke machines. Only there's varying levels. There's a water-based one of those that works in a disco, so you can breathe it. Yeah. I will tell you, any of you guys thinking, I've got the disco one. The disco one is the same machine. They do two variations of that machine. And so they do one that uses a solvent product, which is the Thermo one. And then they do a non-solvent one, which is one that you work in the disco, where you can breathe it in. Otherwise, if you had the Thermo one, by the way, it leaves a greasy surface. So you have to clean all surfaces after. And you're relying on the machine, the smoke, going into areas you can't get to, like the springs, like where the ozone goes, like absolutely. The wires under the dashboard, and gets in all those areas. But you're not cleaning it off of all those surfaces. You don't really need to clean it off of every spring underneath the seat. But if it's gone on the glass, you'll see it will. You've got to clean all the surfaces of all the dashboard and all the vinyl and everything else, because it does actually emit a solvent-based product. So that's your Thermo Fogger.
And then you've also got the UVL fogging. And how does that work?
Right, a UVL fogger is like a sprayer, but we've got a couple of those. They are a liquid fogger. You put in whatever the recipe is. We use them for varying different products. And it sprays it like a very, very powerful sprayer. Yeah. So you can spray it in general directions. So if you could spray it all over the glove boxes and all over don't spray it on the electrics, because it is actually a physical sprayer, but it's spraying it in a very powerful mist. So it's not the same as a Thermo Fogger. It's not going in like a smoke and filling the car up. It's directional. But you can use it with different products. You can use it with liquid cleaning products, and also you can use other kinds of deodorant. Yeah. So it's more about that. That works well with removing physical things from the car. You can put a strong deodorizing cleaning product in there before you make an extraction, using the extraction machines as well. So it's also very good for if you've done the thermo fogging. So sometimes when we do a car, we were talking about it earlier, doing a combination, you might do the car with the thermo fogger and then follow it up with the UVL, because the thermo fogger is leaving the greasy surface in all over the areas with the pairing product usually. Yep. And then your UVL fogger is going to spray on all the surfaces before you get your microfiber and clean it all off. Yeah. So we would also use deodorizing products for that. So you can also, if you're going blind, you're trying to do a car, you don't know what the smell is or what's come from it. Occasionally we got that comes along as a strange smell, and nobody really knows what it is. So you might do it with varying different products and different ways to do it, based on what information you're gathering. You know, you might look around, find no evidence of any dog, but you might find a bit of ash evidence, but something else smells fishy. You use it in combination.
Great. So, and I think now we're just going to finally finish off with this particular question. And I guess many people have probably come across this themselves over the years. But what about if you've just bought a car from a dealer and it's not too great? What do you suggest?
Okay, so we do a lot of this. I think, to be honest with the dealers and be fair with the dealers, they don't understand the problem in the first place. So the auctions aren't putting it on the paperwork now yet. They probably will in the future, but you know, when the cars are being auctioned, there's nothing on the description to say whether the car smells. And of course, people are buying cars and buying them online. The dealers are buying them in. You know, you might stick your head in a car and it doesn't really smell that much. It's not until the car warms up. Usually the smell exacerbates if you add dampness to it and heat.
Yeah.
So, you know, it might genuinely be that the dealer's bought the car in, thinks a good valet. Most of the time people think a good clean's going to get rid of the smell. And in some instances, of course, it does. And a good clean and a bomb, you know, these aerosol things, and then, you know, they can resolve the problem. And on an 80% of cars, it will. So, you know, to be fair to the dealer, they might have innocently bought the car in, never even thought about it. You know, most of car sales people are guys, you know, there may be a few 19-year-old girls, pregnant ladies, so who may be a bit more sensitive. But most of the time, it's, you know, the guy's doing the looking for the car, a guy's selling it to him, and it's not until the car makes its way across the country that the lady who's going to have the car, likes the colour and has, you know, all that stuff, gets in it and then smells the car and says, "This smells," and that's when the problem starts. You know, no, it doesn't smell. What are you talking about? I can't smell it, and then everything else goes on. So, so what do you do about it? The answer is you've got to contact the dealer first. I mean, you know, you read all the statutory rights. A dealer needs the opportunity to put things right. So you need to call the dealer and just say, "Look, car came with smell." The dealer's going to get a lot of calls from people complaining about everything. You know, for every 10 cars that they sell, they're going to get a call from somebody who says there's a dent or a squeaking noise or a engine's not running right, or what side do I put my fuel in, or you know, I can't seem to get the seat working. Or there's a whole load of reasons why people call the dealers, and a lot of them are complaints. You know, I went to do it and the spare's not there and all the rest of it, and you know, you get these calls. So, you know, you've got to make the dealer aware that you are genuine and that it is a genuine problem and that you are taking it seriously at the start. So, you know, say it smells, I bought it from you in good faith and I need the thing sorted out, you know. It's very easy to come to us. We get a lot of people call us and say, "I bought this car and, you know, I just want you to give it a clean and get rid of the smell." Well, that may be what they've done already, you know, if the car does smell quite bad, or even if it's not bad, it's just annoying to you. You know, you think, well, I don't want to buy a car. It's done 40,000 miles. Looking at the service history and the ownership history, it looks to me like the previous owner's done 30,000 in it and they might have been smoking.
Yeah.
And then you've got to do another 30,000 while you own it with a smoke of smelling horrible, you know, and it can last that long. It can last years. So, you know, it could be a serious problem and it could be a reason that you don't want the car. So I think you're going to have to go back to the dealer straight away and say, "Look, I am treating it seriously. We're not people that are super fussy people. You know, we're not moaning people. We're not just complaining about something that's nothing. You may not have smelt it, but this is serious and we don't want a car that smells." So, and then talk to them and say, "Look, you know, obviously you can email them as well. I do recommend emailing or sending them a letter at the same time. If they're local, go back to them but go back with a letter. Write a letter, take it with you, go back there and say, "Look, you know, here's the car, here's the problem, and I want it put right." And you know, look, also I want you to sympathise. It's all very well folding your arms and saying that, but the dealers probably don't fully understand it. They're going to think, "Oh, well, it just needs a valet. Chuck it back at the valet people. Give it a good clean." Most of the valet guys may not even be speaking our language. So, you know, you may find that he gives it another good clean. "Sorry about that." And then you're going to get the smell come back again. But you've got to give them a chance. And what I would suggest to them is step it out in a letter saying you're quite happy for them to rectify it if they can. But you believe it might be something a bit more than that. And if it is, if it's not, fine, and you find it's gone and you're happy with it. But if it is, you'd expect them to take a professional to fix it, or you know, what do they propose? You know, you can say that you found another company that's going to deal with it. There are more than just us out there that deal with these problems, but we're down in the southeast, so you could say, "Well, look, you know, we've found a company that might be able to deal with it for me." You could do the Sunday morning job and have a go yourselves. And then if, you know, because driving all the way back to Manchester, if you bought it from, you know, if you live in Manchester, it's not far, no. But
yeah, exactly.
But, you know, driving it all the way 100 miles to put it right when you could have had a few hours cleaning it and, you know, and getting to know the car and all that stuff. You know, it isn't a new car after all. But at the same time, a smell can be as bad as a clicking gearbox. It's not going into third gear,
especially if you're a 19-year-old girl,
especially if you're or pregnant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
yeah. So to help the dealer with the problem at the start, but highlight to the dealer that if it's in their 30-day deal, you don't want the car. If it's not going to be rectified, you need to make that clear at the start. And really, discipline yourselves. Don't buy a car and then think you can put it right in the first couple of weeks, and then your time's gone by, and then live with it for another 5 years with it smelling. Invariably, you won't. You'll end up selling it, taking it back to the dealer, or passing it, or doing something with it, because it may not mean a lot to some people. People that smoke, of course, getting a smoky car, it's not going to bother them, is it? So there are owners that suit the car. But at the same time, I would advise, don't live with the problem at the start, because it will just haunt you for a long, long time. And, if it's dealt with properly, there's no reason why you can't get rid of the problem. And it may be 2 or 3 goes to do it. If you can find there has been a spillage, you may need a specialist to get the carpet up, may even need a replacement bit of carpet, or we do injections and other things. But, at the end of the day, a smell can be not very nice, and you're driving. It's when you come back to it, it's been sat in the sun and you're walking across the car park, take their minds back to the story earlier.
Yeah.
And then you get in it and it smells. So
that's great advice. So I know, obviously, the listeners, if you are basically got an odour problem, there's some great tips there in order to help you, solve the problem yourself. But Gary, your company, you're based in the South East. Do you want to give the viewers and the listeners, some advice onto where you are and how they can find you and where you're located?
Right, okay, so we're in the middle of Chelmsford. There's a station just up the road from us, 5-10 minute walk. And by all means, give us a call, and we'll talk about what the problem is first and what we think the solution is. We've got a sliding scale of services, so we can pick what we think might be the right solution. If that doesn't work because we've underestimated what the problem is, then you just pay the balance to go to the next option of services. If you're dealing with a dealer, give the dealer a ring and just try and help the dealer with your problem. But sometimes, if you bought the car and you are near us and the dealer wants to get involved, sometimes the dealer will pay towards it or pay for it, say, well, we'll deal with it remotely, and say, look, we've sold you the car, we realise the problem. I encourage the dealer to contact the owner they got it from if they can, and see what was wrong with it. Maybe they can say, oh yeah, we do know the guy who sold it to us, and then they realise that, it was a problem. So, do the DIY. There's lots more help and advice. We will be doing some more on our website. On our old website, there was a lot about the stuff. But remember the things that you can use.
And the web address is?
We're just New Again, www.newagain.co.uk. So
excellent.
You can go on there, and there is some more stuff on that. There's 1 or 2 more podcast stuffs on there. There's some pretty, there's one we did recently that's a pretty powerful message. We're just chatting away, but when I think Danny and I was doing one, and it's a real vigorous, set of instructions on how to really get stuck in and do it. So you may want to listen to that one, and so before you roll your sleeves up and have a go, because sometimes it's the easiest way is just to get on with it, and fix it yourself.
Absolutely.
So there's that as well.
So there's loads of resources on the website at www.newagain.co.uk. So I think that's probably it for this episode of the Car Care Podcast. Again, thank you very much, Gary, for coming along and sharing your vast amount of knowledge and expertise in this field. And I think the listeners are going to be grateful for the information that you shared with them. So, so I don't know if you want to say cheerio and
it's bye bye from me.
Yeah, and it's goodbye from me. And we look forward to catching up with you again on the next episode of the Car Care Podcast. So, thanks again for listening. Goodbye.
Goodbye.